The Cold War was a sustained period of political tension between capitalist and communist world superpowers. The tension triggered the Berlin Wall blockade, the Korean War, the Vietnam War, and the Cuban Missile Crisis, as well as many other conflicts related to the United States' desire to contain communism and to discourage the establishment of communist governments in foreign nations. The Cold War conflict was a source of paranoia and hysteria among American citizens, and a high-pressure period among members of the United States military. The Soviet Union formally dissolved in 1991 after pressure from the United States was at an all-time high through the 1980s. But many small conflicts arose in that decade, one of which was the communist insurgency in the Philippines. Mark Ritter enlisted in the United States Air Force in 1981 at the age of 19. He was from Buffalo, New York, near Niagara Falls, which was a location considered to be at high risk for an atomic bomb attack. He grew up with the hysteria of the Cold War, as well as with the paranoia of being directly targeted by a communist superpower.
From the time I can remember, I probably was in 2nd or 3rd grade. And we started doing air raid drills, like you do earthquake drills today, where you guys duck and cover. We used to get under the desks, close the blinds, because that was supposed to help us if an atomic bomb was dropped on us.
Yeah.
I think I remember telling you too, is I had I can remember to this day as a 2nd grader having kind of a scary vision of Russian soldiers jumping through the windows, through the blinds.
So loud, now you don't.
He was born after the launch of the first Sputnik satellite in 1957, which triggered the fear in Americans that the Soviets were surpassing us. That changed the focus of education. From primary school, it was now all about math and science.
It was all about science.
Yeah.
And it was all about science so we could stay ahead, and so the Americans could stay ahead. And so they really invested in science and math and changed all the curriculum to do that. And so it kind of led me to where I was going, and it's kept with me.
To make that paranoia worse, Khrushchev pounded his shoe on the table at an international conference and declared, "We will bury you," causing both national and international panic. Tensions between the United States and the Soviet Union were extremely high by the time Ritter joined the forces. But this presented a confusing situation as to who the real enemy was in the eyes of the military.
There was someone to be afraid of. There was a country, there was a rival, there was the whole Soviet bloc, right?
Yeah.
Who is there now? I mean, people are afraid of Muslims. Completely incorrect, right?
Yeah.
But there is no, there's no Khrushchev pounding his shoe on the table saying, "We will bury you." It's very different.
Yeah.
It's almost like, in a way, and I think it's frustrating for the military, is there is no specific enemy. It's sort of like fighting a cloud.
Governments were becoming corrupted and collapsing all over the world. This put the United States on edge because unstable governments were believed to be vulnerable to communist conquest, the domino theory. In the Philippines in the late 1970s, Ferdinand Marcos essentially dictated the country. Marcos and his former beauty queen wife stole billions of dollars from the impoverished Filipino people to live a life of luxury and privilege.
Now remember, Marcos was an awful guy. It was an awful decision to have to support an awful guy. But at the time, they thought it was the best choice of a lot of really bad choices.
Yeah.
Marcos and his wife were horrible.
Yeah.
They were horrible to their own people.
To the joy of the Filipino people, the Marcos regime finally fell, forced by Filipino rebel groups. One of the most predominant rebel groups responsible was the Maoist Marxist Communist Guerrilla Party of the Philippines, called the New People's Army. Fear of the potential power of this group on the weak Filipino government led the United States military to strengthen their forces in the Philippines, and that's when my dad was sent in.
Well, this time we flew around, and I fell asleep, and we woke up the next day and it was sunlight, and I thought, wait a minute, I was in California. And we got gas and basically gassed up again, and with one more stop in between, we were jumping out of an airplane in the Philippines at night. Said this isn't a drill.
The trigger to this heightened military presence was a deliberate attack on United States military by the New People's Army. This event is not well documented, but Ritter remembers it clearly.
What had happened is the insurgents found the route that a bunch of Navy seamen who were coming back from leave were on, and they launched a grenade into a bus and killed a bunch of Navy seamen. Yeah. And that was the last straw.
He was sent in with predominantly Army Special Forces to patrol and protect Clark Air Force Base. It was the largest, most urbanized base at the time outside of United States borders. It was believed to be at high risk for penetration by the New People's Army.
Our job was really to protect the base, and the base was so huge that it was almost impossible. It's not like thinking about protecting a school ground, or for that matter even a federal building. It was huge. It was, I can't remember how big it was, but it was maybe 200 square miles. It was that big, and it was all jungle. Most of it was jungle. Yeah. And so the communist insurgents group were penetrating the base at all the different times, and so we were set out in the jungle to help protect it.
Ritter says though the New People's Army was not well organized, they were well armed with Russian arms and highly offensive. Their membership number was at an all-time high at that time, with an estimated 25,000 members. He recalls this assignment as one of the most frightening of his military career.
The closest I ever saw him was, all of us used to have to stand guard, and we wore, you've seen the night vision goggles and stuff, and the closest I ever saw was, they were probably, I don't know, maybe 100 yards away, and shooting. I was 19 years old, and it was very scary. To have somebody shoot at you is a scary thing.
After 3 months, he was sent back to the United States, and another group of airmen and army men took his place. But his experience in the Philippines changed the way he looked at the military and the world.
Then once I was in the military, I realized there are bad governments and there are bad people, and they want to do bad things, and you do need the military. Yeah. Before, I would have never really believed that. I would have thought, oh, this is all just made up. But there are. Yeah. And there is a reason to have a military.
The New People's Army of the Philippines was subdued by 1990, and today it is less than 10,000 strong. The Soviet Union fell, communism fell, and the United States was on to its next conflict.